Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I hope each and every one of you are doing well today. I decided, before I get started, I decided to start, and before I do every live stream, I'm going to always try to have a variety of music to play before and tell you what they're all about, if I can. So what I just played for you was five Latin girls by the Pregnant Men. And that goes back to the year 1981. A friend of mine, Sherry Quatrin, she lives down in Mississippi. It was a new wave group from back then and long forgotten. I didn't even know about them at the time. I discovered them a few years ago. So anyway, so decided to go and expose y'all to that. So there you have it. So, and I will put down the link and everything. So just, follow Sherry on Facebook and follow her YouTube channel as well. So there's that. Okay. Today we're going to talk about Chase Oliver and the Libertarian candidate for president, because this guy, I mean, he's a little different from he's a little different in some ways. Some ways he like Keaton Weiss said in his conversation with Craig Passadula recently on Due Dissidence, he said in many ways he is a textbook libertarian, which in many ways he is, but in some significant ways he isn't. And I'm going to discuss basically about him as a presidential candidate and my perspective from my socialist perspective, pros and cons on how I view libertarianism. So I call it a good fun fest, I guess you could say. So there is that. And where the socialists and libertarians agree and disagree, because there's overlap and obvious disagreements. So I guess we'll be. I guess we can. I guess you could say that we can begin in the beginning with Chase Oliver. So let's do that. So the Libertarians had their convention recently, and they nominated Chase Oliver. Let me find the photo right there. And he, as far as I know, he is the first libertarian candidate who's a gay man that gotten the nomination for president, which that is not necessarily should be controversial for the libertarians. The libertarians, for the most part, are decent on that issue. They, one areas where they do overlap with the left, so that's not a controversial issue there. But anyway, he is the candidate. But where the rubber meets the road is his conflict with the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party, and that's where things are kind of hit and miss, because there are things about the Mises Caucus that's textbook libertarian as well, but there are things about the Mises Caucus that, from a libertarian perspective, I think some libertarians will find troubling. It just depends who you talk to. I would say, just like when if you go have a room filled with 10 socialists, you're going to get sometimes 10 different answers of what socialism is. You're going to get the same fucking thing with some libertarians. You're going to have 10 libertarians. You're going to get 10 different viewpoints on what is, in fact, defines a libertarian. And so that's probably one area where they had that also kind of in common right there. So let's see. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and do this here. All right. So as I said, and what I'm probably going to do is I'll play you the video clip to give you a good background on what the hubbub is about regarding Chase Oliver. So this is from Due Dissidents, and they had Craig Pastadula from the show Pasta to Go, his new program, and the co-host of Combo Couch, as we all know. And he shared his perspective because he was at the Libertarian Party convention. So, okay, so we'll let them take it away. Come on. Okay.
Reports here. Libertarians pick Chase Oliver as presidential nominee. The Libertarian Party selected former Georgia Senate candidate Chase Oliver as their presidential nominee on Sunday, spurning appeals for support over the weekend from both Donald Trump and RFK Jr. The selection of Oliver, who has described himself as armed and gay, and whose third-party candidacy helped force a runoff in the Georgia Senate race in 2022.
All right. What the hell?
Rowing is boring and hard, but it's a full-body workout that engages 86% of muscles. That's what.
I don't know what's going on here. I have an ad blocker and it keeps doing this shit. Sorry about that. Come on.
Georgia Senate race in 2022 came a day after Trump suggested he would be the best nominee for the party, drawing a sustained chorus of boos. The former president was deemed ineligible for the nomination by the Libertarian Party chair. Trump wrote on his social media platform that as the Republican Party's presumptive nominee, he could not have accepted the nomination anyway, while...
Okay, I can't stand it.
Kennedy was eliminated in the first round of voting, receiving only 19 votes. Oliver...
Okay, it's a little sluggish right now. Apologize about that, but as I said, he said that the let's see. Okay, I think it's out of work. Yeah.
Who was aligned with a more traditionalist faction of the Libertarian Party, the classical Liberal Caucus, clinched the nomination after almost 8 hours and 7 rounds of voting. He defeated a more hardline Mises Caucus candidate by less than 1% in the penultimate round of voting before delegates were asked to choose between Oliver and no candidate. Mises Caucus pretty much versus everyone else is where we're at, said Adrian Malagon, the Mises-aligned chair of the California Libertarian Party. I think there has to be a better understanding of what the mission is going to be going forward and better organization. I just don't think it's sustainable. Okay, so the Mises Caucus remains in power. Angela McArdle was reelected chair of the party, so it's still their party in that sense. In a different sense, this nominee doesn't seem to reflect that more populist-aligned will of the Mises Caucus. However, there seems to be, from my standpoint, a lot of confusion about whether this guy, Chase Oliver, is a real libertarian, because some people can't believe some of his views. How could you be for X and call yourself a libertarian? So I just want to walk through a couple of these, okay? So Tim Pool tweets out, the LP just nominated a pro-vaccine mandate candidate. And then Barton Bella points out that what Chase Oliver actually tweeted was a business can decide to require workers to be vaxxed or limit customers to those with a vax, but no government shouldn't make those decisions. So he's not for government mandates. He believes in the right for businesses to mandate the jab for their workers, which you can agree or disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't think employers should have that kind of power over their workers, but that's why I'm not a libertarian. This view of his, that yes, business...
And neither am I. That's one of the reasons I'm not a libertarian either, at least an economic libertarian. And, I can understand the argument about the vax and the mandates and all of that from a governmental standpoint. Yes, I kind of was always against mandating the jab by the government, but I was always against mandating the jab by the private sector too, by the business sector as well. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm actually jabbed. I have the vaccine and I'm boosted. But while I am boosted and vaxxed, I am not going to tell other people that they should be. That is totally up to you as an individual, and therefore I'm more libertarian on that issue than someone like Chase Oliver, who is, economically, for the private sector and into the whole religious ideology of property rights, that sort of thing. So in that sense, I'm more of a true libertarian than Chase Oliver, because I don't want the government to tell me what to do, but I also have a problem with businesses regulating what I do with my life as well. And so in that regard. So anyway, I'm gonna let them talk. So
businesses have a right to mandate things. That is very consistent with classical libertarianism. So of course, a libertarian would think that.
Yeah, that's where Rand Paul got in trouble years ago, because he was arguing against desegregation of private businesses.
Right.
Because if you follow libertarian logic to its conclusion, yes, that should be left to the marketplace. Well, if you don't like that this lunch counter is segregated, don't patronize
go to another
it.
one. Exactly.
And I think you heard on my video when I asked him the 3 questions, and I asked about gain of function, right?
Yep.
That was a trick question, because I had a feeling he was going to say what he said.
Yep.
And
there's
want
more.
to hear
I
a
just
lot
want to
more.
get to a couple more of these if it's okay, because these is all consistent with libertarianism, right? So libertarians, by nominating Chase Oliver, the LP just alienated every Silicon Valley libertarian I know. Their presidential nominee supports transitioning children. That's right. He is against banning gender-affirming care for minors. He is not pro-mask or jab mandate on a government level, but he supports businesses' rights to do that. Men and women's sports, I guess he wants the government to make no rules about that. Again, think what you want. That's a consistent libertarian position, as is open borders. Like, libertarian go-to is not the government's business. Yeah, any medical treatment for whoever wants it, sure, that's up to the market. Like, he is he is a real libertarian. The fact that he's being rejected by so much of the party, to me, says that there's been an ideological shift in the party, which there has been. Otherwise, the Mises Caucus wouldn't be in power. But that's what's going on here. You have an influx of basically MAGA adjacent populists flooding into this party, crying foul at a guy who really is a pretty textbook libertarian. Go ahead, Buster.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's the textbook libertarian. I think there'll be an argument about what jobs, what an employer can do as far as a vaccine of what you put in your body. I think that's kind of a nuanced question. I don't think a lot of libertarians sit on that, because it's, once again, they believe in your body, your choice, right? That's
right,
part of your freedom.
Right, but that doesn't mean the business, based on libertarian principles, has to accommodate your choice.
Right, based on libertarian principles, the business would say, okay, we require our employees to be jabbed. If you don't like it, go work for another employer who doesn't.
Yeah, I know
the most market-friendly employer will win out. This is why I'm not a libertarian, because they don't account for power dynamics. You impose a mandate on your workers, 99 out of 100 workers are going to accommodate the mandate so they don't get fired. And that's why I'm not a libertarian. But so I'm not defending his point of view. I'm saying it's pretty consistent with libertarianism.
I mean, if you look at libertarian taken to its logical conclusion, it's like they saw Mad Max and they said, good idea.
Yeah, it depends on the libertarian you're talking to, and from my perspective, because in my personal experience with talking about libertarians, or talking to, or dialogue with libertarians, most libertarians I interact with, it's been overall positive. We disagree on things like healthcare, because I believe in universal healthcare. Not just I believe in universal healthcare and Medicare for all. I believe it should be as socialized as it is in the UK, and as socialized as it is in Cuba, even. I think it ought to be that level of socialized. And when I say socialized like it is in the UK, I mean it in its westernized social democratic sense. And when I say socialized like it is in Cuba, although I am not a Marxist-Leninist or a communist or what have you, or a tanky, one of the things that Cuba's gotten right from the Cuban Revolution is healthcare for all. I will not ever dispute that. When I had the Yankee Tanky on my show last year, who was pro-Soviet Union, I told him that of all, I never faulted the Soviet Union for granting things like basics, like healthcare for all, homes for all, jobs for all. Those basic securities were guaranteed. I never disputed that. That was a beautiful thing that they achieved. It was just issues dealing with civil liberties is where I kind of drew my line in the sand on those issues. but on the economics, I can't dispute those great achievements. They were huge achievements considering the circumstances that they went through. I just disagree with how certain means of how they went about it. But I look at capitalism, and again, I don't think that individual communists are evil. I don't think that individual capitalists are evil. But I do think that when you look in the grand scheme of things and you look at capitalism over the centuries, I just think the hardship and misery it has created, you could just see the damage it has caused, and you can see why popular movements of that sort come into being. This is why I've always advocated democratic socialism, if you will, because I think that democratic socialism is the par course. Libertarians disagree with me there. So, but I've had a positive dialogue with most libertarians. They think I'm just a weird crank, and that's fine. Now, I've ran across some people who claim they're libertarians, and really what they are just standard Republicans, no different from a Rush Limbaugh fan from 1993. I'm not interested in dialogue with such people. Calling yourself a libertarian and favoring all the shit that comes out of the Heritage Foundation isn't libertarianism. If it is, I don't want any part of it. So, okay, we'll let them continue.
So
I would just
that way.
I would just argue that this is a situation that hasn't been touched before. I mean, it's hard to say this is a classic libertarian position when we haven't had to deal with a global pandemic of sorts. And
Sure,
I would still think that a lot of libertarians will still come forth and argue the ultimate freedom is your own body. That's where your own sovereignty lies.
Well, that's what the Mises Caucus is saying. Yeah. So I mean, you're right. But I'm just saying, like, for them to say we want to take the party in a different direction, that's totally valid. I support their right to do that. I agree with them in this case. Like, I'm with the Mises Caucus on that question.
Yeah.
But they're the ones taking the party in a different direction. Like, this guy didn't hijack the party. This guy, I mean, I could have predicted. You told me, okay, classical liberal libertarian. Yeah, sure. Open borders, no ban on gender medicine, like whatever goes, man. We're not making any rules. That makes sense to me.
I do want to give a shout out. I see somebody on the chat line here. I do want to give a shout out to the one positive libertarian that I was referring to, and that's Sean. We have some disagreements, but there are things that we do agree on, and he doesn't go with the ad hominem attacks the way that I had ran across with some other folks out there. So, and I thank him for that. And he's a great guy to have a good dialogue with. So, how are you doing, Sean? So anyway, we'll continue. Give me a second here. We will continue.
And like I said, that when I asked him that question to ban on gain of function, he's like, "Well, I would ban the government for doing it, but if the free market did it,
right,
you know,
that's
what I'm
their
saying?"
answer for everything.
Like, dude, this is gain of function over here. Like, no, it should be banned. Like, I don't care if a private business wants to do it. No, you're not going to do it. You're not going to create a disease then to try and create the cure, because that's what they do in these situations. And also, too, this guy bragged when Donald Trump got, deplatformed, and a lot of people kept that tweet. Clint Russell retweeted it himself. So, he was like, "You get what you deserve," and I believe he kind of quoted one of the amendments that the Democrats continued to quote. What was it, the 25th Amendment, or I can't remember what it was, when it was saying when you got to impeach the president.
It's the whole ball game.
Yeah.
Well, this is the problem with the libs on the censoring bit. They become libertarians when it comes to big tech censorship, because the libertarian argument is Meta's a private company. If they don't like what you say, they could throw you off. Again, not an argument I agree with, but consistent with libertarian orthodoxy as far as I know.
Well, once again, they're not honoring
And here's my solution to big tech censorship. I think that you need to take the entire social media sphere and regulate it totally as a public utility to protect content makers' rights, their free speech rights, and to also protect the companies from potential lawsuits. And if there's somebody out there that are arguing for, let's say, something as dark as the day of the rope and advocating that from the Turner Diaries or some shit like that, you know, obviously you know that's where you can just shut somebody down. You know, if somebody's advocating violence, that's a dub position. But you know, if somebody wants to be a racist asshole, or somebody wants to be you know, a homophobic asshole, or anti-Semitic asshole, or Islamic phobic asshole, or whatever kind of phobia they want to express and all that, and they're not advocating violence, they just want to be ignorant, clutch your pearls all you want. You know, you got a right to create your own platform, tell these people what an asshole that person is, by all means. I mean, you know, the free speech must be absolute under all circumstances, because, you know, if you sit there and you're praising Donald Trump's Twitter channel being taken down. I was opposed to Trump's Twitter profile being taken down as a result of January 6th, by the way. And I voted to put him back on Twitter when that option was there, because it was the right thing to do. Yeah, again, with Alex Jones. Now, yeah, I don't believe in deplatforming anybody, but I personally think that a Dennis Prager, a Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, or Ben Shapiro is more toxic to the political discourse than Alex Jones. I wouldn't take them down, but they're more toxic because they can reach out for more people with their ideas that I broadly disagree with. Alex Jones, you know, he's cartoonish. You know, all this putting water in the frogs, turning the frogs gay. You know, I mean, you know, just like, you know, you're gonna get upset over that. I mean, the guy's funny. I mean, he's entertaining, and you know, I was mad when they took down Alex Jones. I used to listen to him for entertainment. I didn't, you know. Now there were times he was correct. I mean, you know, you can look at Alex Jones and think he's crazy, but you know what? He supported Occupy Wall Street, and he was actually sympathetic to the left-wing activists being attacked by the police. So even with Alex Jones, he wasn't always in the wrong. There were a few times he was correct, unlike Mark Levin or Sean Hannity or Dennis Prager, who are perpetually wrong on virtually 99.9999% of everything. I still would not deplatform those guys, but my point is that nobody should have their channels shut down, their YouTube channels, their Twitter channels, their Facebook channels, hell, their MySpace channels. Nobody should be shut down. And for Chase Oliver to cheerlead that, what kind of libertarian are you? You know, again, there are people who have claimed to be libertarians that I ended up sounding more libertarian than they have. I ended up sounding like Ron Paul, debating. Somebody called me out on the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. Some supposed libertarian types telling me how wrong I was and why we needed to stay in Afghanistan. And I showed them a video of Ron Paul who made the same arguments I made. So, you know, and some of these people calling themselves libertarians, and they sound like Ben Shapiro. What the fuck? And Ben Shapiro basically was sometime utter, I'm basically a libertarian. Yeah, right.
Honoring a contract, the big tech companies, are they, right? They've entered an agreement with the United States citizens, especially Section 230 of the NDAA, where they said they're going to act as not as a publisher, but as a platform. And in doing so, they're protected and shielded from any liability. They can't get sued, so they have to honor that. Totally. And if they're going to enter into that agreement, they should have to show their homework. It should be an open source system where we can see their algorithm and see what they're doing. And that means a lot to me, coming from a guy who's been censored up and down for quite some time. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm with you 100% on that. But so Rechtenwald said he had won 5 rounds of voting and then he lost. So how much of Chase Oliver's nomination is due to their sort of ranked choice voting type system? Because it seemed like this guy wasn't at the top of the pack until the opposition to the Mises caucus sort of consolidated behind him. Yeah. Well, I heard they called him the Joe Jorgensen of 2024. right? There's Joe Jorgensen, supposedly. She was in third place most of the time, and at the very end, as people dropped out, they made alliances. That's why, like I said, it was like boiler room. In between each vote, you see all these candidates going everywhere. It was so exciting. But I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Dave Smith, who was supposed to be the choice for the Mises Caucus, right? He was going to run for president. And you guys know Dave Smith. You've seen him on when we did the Smith Door 24, very popular. He dragged his feet, and he dropped out very, very late. It didn't give any candidate time, especially Mike Richtenwald, that should say his name, a chance to properly campaign and get the momentum he needed. So he really, and Dave took accountability for this, but regardless, ranked choice voting or however they do it, because it's not really true ranked choice voting. It's like a form of elimination ranked choice voting, or however you consider it. It didn't make a difference. A presidential candidate has to campaign, and it needs time to campaign. It needs time to knock on doors, make phone calls, whip votes, and their candidates didn't get that time. Well, even with Dave's endorsement, he fell short. And you heard him come off the stage and say, this guy's a snake, because there was some inside stuff going on that was very exciting to deal with too as well. Mike,
do you know who he was talking about when he said that? You don't have to reveal it.
I know. I'm assuming it's Mike Termat, because or Matt, is it Mike Termat, right? I can't say this guy's name right.
That's one obstacle to becoming a candidate for president. No one can say your fucking name.
Nobody knows your name, right?
Yeah.
Well, they made an announcement like before the last 2 or 3 rounds that Mike Termat would accept a VP position from Chase Oliver. Now, the crazy thing is that the same way the way they pick the vice president is the same way they pick the president. So they're just kind of letting the other delegates know what they plan to do, how they're throwing their weight. They made a little last-minute backdoor deal, and it worked out for both of them, because Chase Oliver became the president, and Mike Termat just barely edged out Clint Russell. Like I said, and Clint Russell beat up Vivek Ramaswamy on that debate stage. He just edged him out, and now they got the ticket they want.
So Vivek this is a kind of a tangent, but Vivek was participating in a vice presidential debate. In other words, ostensibly, theoretically, seeking the VP nomination of the Libertarian.
Yeah, well, I'm not. Vivek Ramaswamy was at the convention, so was Donald Trump, but which I found really weird. That was taking place. Thomas Massey was at the convention. That was a little less weird. Anyway, that's enough for that. Pasta was at the convention. Craig Pasta Gardula, he was at the convention. So I played that video because it was, gave you a kind of a background of kind of things that kind of transpired at the convention. So anyway, it was not unusual to see Congressman Thomas Massey at the convention. So it would make sense, considering that he is sort of a Ron Paul type of today. Yes, that's right, Miguel. Pasta to go. Yes. And Sean, want to let you know, Craig Pasta Gardula, who's the co-host of the Combo Couch with Fiorella Isabel. I told you about the show before. She's a Marxist-Leninist, and he's kind of a libertarian leftist. And he's joined the Libertarian Party, in the hopes of, on a few little key issues here and there, to try to persuade them to do things like adopt Medicare for all as a position and all of that. But he has a largely libertarian tendencies in his political DNA, and which is why he ended up in the Libertarian Party as a libertarian leftist of sorts. So just wanted to go and let you know about that. Anyway, let's see. Let's go on with let's see. So let's actually go with the libertarian point of view on things. So let's go with go on. Okay. Give me a second here. Okay. Yeah, let's go with probably the most well-known libertarian ideologue in the country right now. He was sort of the if you want to consider libertarianism as a right-leaning ideology, he was sort of the Bernie Sanders of the right in his day. We're talking about 2008, 2012, and around that time period. We're talking about Congressman Ron Paul. And he ran for president in 1988. And that's when I first heard of him. He ran for president in 1988, and I just graduated high school then. And I saw him on the Morton Downey show when Morton Downey was alive, had his show. And it was over the legalization of drugs and everything. And honestly, this was the very first time I've heard of the libertarian ideology and all of that. So I started, I did a lot of my own little research on it and everything. And there were aspects of libertarianism that appealed to me. But again, I felt more comfortable being a liberal, so I remain a liberal. But I was like, even back then I saw there was some overlap, but there were certain things I just couldn't go along with. I've just never been really pro-capitalism per se. I just don't worship at the altar of the so-called free enterprise system. I'm not saying that the government should run the entire economy or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I just don't have faith in the in absolute free market, free enterprise. I just don't. And honestly, I wouldn't have faith in it if the government run every aspect of the economy either. I would favor something along the lines of what Great Britain did after World War II with the replacement of private corporations with public corporations. That's what they were called in the Clement Attlee labor government. They were called public corporations, where the government did nationalize the industries and had national boards set up with trade unions, the former owners, and the government trying to go and work on a way to revitalize the economy. And it largely worked. By the 1950s, the British economy was more or less back on its feet from the ravages of World War II. And what Clement Attlee's labor government did was basically the New Deal of FDR on uber steroids. Yeah. It made FDR's New Deal look like anarcho-capitalism by comparison. And so that's kind of the perspective. Also, another model that I favor is the model. I was talking to Yankee Tanky last year about the Soviet model. While I would not go there is a model that I do like under Field Marshal Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia, that he took that basic model in Yugoslavia and he democratized it, and basically decentralized public ownership of the means of production, where basically the workers, it became almost co-ops in the entire economy. What was a state-run economy ended up turning into democratically run co-ops, where workers were actually getting a significant fair share of the profits from these industries. And the standard of living was pretty comfortable in Yugoslavia. If you want to call what Field Marshal Tito was doing as communism, it was probably the most successful version of it. And it was democratic. I mean, civil liberties, you could criticize the government. You had freedom of the press. You had freedom of religion. You had freedom of travel. You had all these perks that was not in existence in, let's say, the Soviet Union, or let's say, or other places like that. So in a lot of ways, it was kind of like Western Europe, but it was, but it was a lot of things that they overlap with their Eastern European counterparts. So, but all that came to an end when Field Marshal Tito died, because of a lot of old ethnic tensions that took place in the Balkans, and the Yugoslavian Federation ceased to exist in 2006, which was pretty sad. I plan to visit some of those former countries. There are former the nations today that comprise what was former Yugoslavian Federation one of these days. But I feel Marshall Tito is a very interesting person to read about. So, but anyway, getting back to Ron Paul. I'm sorry, I meander like this. I've always respected Ron Paul. I like Ron Paul. He may think I'm a piece of shit for being a socialist, and that's fine. I saw Ron Paul last year at the Rage Against War Machine. I was in Washington, and it was funny because I was talking to some of the people I was with at KRTD Media, Shane, and we were talking, and you know that feeling when you're talking to somebody and somebody's behind you, and like in the corner of your eye, you see somebody that was it, and somebody looks super familiar. You turn around, and it was Ron Paul passing me. I was like, holy cow. So anyway, he was one of the keynote speakers, and he was supposed to speak on video, but he spoke live. And there was talk about Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich running a joint ticket in 2008. I was for Dennis Kucinich in 2008 when he ran initially at that time. But the thing about it is that Ron Paul was consistently anti-war, just like many of us on the left were against the Iraq War, anti-torture, just like many of us on the left, back then were critical of the Bush-Cheney doctrine, just like many of us on the left were. He was concerned about domestic surveillance, just like many of us on the left were. Unfortunately, there's been a break on the left, and a lot of them are fine when Democrats are doing it, as it turns out, which pisses me off. It pisses me off because there are people who were involved with these movements, who were liberals 20 years ago involved with these movements. What do they do now? They go around and they end up cheerleading Genocide Joe Biden. So, what the fuck? I mean, and we're talking about a Democratic Party today that to paraphrase Jimmy Dore, these liberals hated Ralph Nader for supposedly giving us George W. Bush, but because of Trump derangement syndrome, they ended up embracing George W. Bush, loving George W. Bush, and still ended up hating Ralph Nader. And I will add, let me add to this. They probably also love George W. Bush more than they do Bernie Sanders. Because while they blame Ralph Nader for giving us George W. Bush, these assholes also blame Bernie Sanders for giving us Donald Trump. Which, if you really do hate Donald Trump for everything that you project him to be, you have to go and blame the Clintons for encouraging him to run. You have to blame George W. Bush for being such a piece of shit as president. You have to blame Obama for taking 2 wars, expanding it to 7, and dashing our hopes and dreams and disappointing us. Of course, I think that a lot of liberals put a lot of more hope into Obama and expectations than one man should have had. But anyway, I digress. But Ron Paul is a good man. I respect him, and as I said, I always listen to Liberty Report, and as I said, there are areas that I disagree with Ron Paul, but there are largely many areas where I do agree. So I just wanted to have that said. Anyway, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to play from the nice little treat from the Libertarian Convention. Donald Trump getting booed. That's quite a spectacle. So hold on a second here. We will play that as soon as I get everything set up.
Anyone can talk about defending freedom, but I've actually put everything on the line to resist these despots and these stuff. And I stand before you tonight as your best hope of defeating the weaponized Biden and the very evil regime that his people, because it's probably not him, because he doesn't know where the hell he is. Anyone can talk about defending freedom, but
Well, there's a lot. The thing about Donald Trump, there's a lot of half-truths when he talks. Donald Trump is not a libertarian. I want to get that out right there. Is he more of a libertarian than, let's say, Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley? Probably. But he's not a libertarian. Libertarians do not do things like trying to enact an insurrection act. And all the problems I do have with economic libertarianism, they would not get on board with things like Project 25. I think that they're principled enough that they would not do that. So I just want to point that out. But he was there pandering for votes and everything. And it would have been nice if Joe Biden had any integrity. I have to give it to him. Trump, he actually had the balls to go to a libertarian convention to go and pander for the votes. Could you see Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton going to a Green Party convention pandering for votes? No, what they would do instead, like in North Carolina, the Democratic Party in North Carolina temporarily were successful 2 years ago on shutting down the Green Party ballot access. And they had to go and get a lawsuit to sue their way back on the ballot. They are thankfully back on the ballot. And as I said, I'm going to do a video later on during the summer. But right now, I'm going to tell y'all, I was initially for Cornel West, but I kind of changed because he's not going to be on that many state ballots. I am for Jill Stein, and I will be doing a video as to why I support Jill Stein. Probably sometime in late June or sometime in July. So you'll hear it. So this caught my eye. He's a narcissistic, opportunist, snake oil salesman. Trump, absolutely he is. He plays kayfabe better than any of those politicians. I'll say this: he's funny. He's funny. He's funny. He's a living Saturday Night Live sketch. That he is, for damn sure. So let me go to Congressman, a Republican congressman that I don't normally say this about Republicans, by the way. So this is what's unique. Thomas Massey from Kentucky is, if I have a favorite Republican in Congress, it would be Thomas Massey. Certainly not his economics. But he is anti-war. And he's against the national security overreach against people. And he's been consistently on the side of free speech. Now, I want to make this clear. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that passed a few weeks in the House. Some of the Democrats and some of the Republicans I have no use for. Some of the Democrats, some of the Republicans are kind of okay, depending on who they are. But kudos to every one of them who voted against the act, because I don't like the idea of a thought police. I don't like that. I'm opposed to anti-Semitism, but I don't like the idea of the government declaring you an anti-Semite because you decided you're critical of Israel, and the government decided, oh, you hurt Israel's feelings. Oh, that makes you an anti-Semite. I have a problem with that. And where do you draw the line? some conservatives some Christian conservatives, believe it or not, some of them were even Christian Zionists, evangelical types, who would have otherwise been for the legislation, realize, well, this could affect on how I preach church or something like that. And they have a point in that regard. I mean, in so many different directions, it's a bad idea to have this legislation passed. Thomas Massey voted against it. Good for him. The squad voted against it. Even dog shit like Marjorie Taylor Greene voted against it. Of course, Miss Jewish Space Lacers has her reasons, I'm sure. But anyway, but I do know that Thomas Massey voted on the grounds of free speech, First Amendment rights, and the old-fashioned notion that 1984 by George Orwell was meant to be a fiction, not an instruction manual. And that's what it comes down to. But unfortunately, 1984 is now an instruction manual throughout our society in the West. And that shit needs to stop. This is where I have in common with the libertarians. Libertarians are opposed to that shit. Real leftists. I don't mean your latte liberals. I don't mean your vote blue no matter who morons. I don't mean your shit libs, TYT, Young Turks, social justice warrior types. I know that's a clunky term. I'm talking about real leftists, the old left. I don't mean like the old left of the 1940s and 50s, but I mean like the old left of the 1980s and 1990s. And I can't believe that that's where I classify myself, but that's where I classify myself. These folks who were always fighting for free speech and all of that, we were opposed to the idea of this whole notion of 1984. And it was, it was nice, listen, when I was hearing conservatives around 2016, 2017, 2015, talking about the social justice warriors, and some of them were sounding very libertarian at the time, I was like, okay, I agree with y'all. Some of these liberals are a little crazy. You can't go dress up for Halloween. That's a little stupid, I mean, that's kind of like what fundamentalist types would say, what have you. So I was getting a little bit perturbed because, like as a leftist, I was like, that was not what I bargained for. So I was wondering what the fuck. But little by little, they let their masks slip out. Not everybody in that coalition. There are conservatives out there that will be consistent and join forces with the left. And when I hear some conservatives say there's no such thing as a leftist for free speech, that's where I get defensive. Because I acknowledge that there are conservatives who are for free speech and libertarians who are for free speech. But here's the bargain. You better accept that there are leftists for free speech too. I'm one of them. I'm consistent. It's part of what I believe in as a leftist. And so I do have a chip on my shoulder sometime about it. I can be a little obnoxious to be accused of something that I'm not guilty of. Because I've seen too much accusations being made about people on my tribalist side. Because I'm kind of tribalist. I'm not a partisan hack like Democrat versus Republicans. Don't care about them. But I am, even though I acknowledge that there are good people you can work with on the other side, I'm still tribalist in the sense that, I want my side to do well. Because if my side do well overall, I can see things take place, like a universal healthcare system, and see things like getting rid of the death penalty, and seeing things like a Green New Deal and free college and housing for all, and getting out of these damn neocon wars abroad. And when free speech is protected, even for the most miserable types, the worst among our population, from my perspective, it also is guaranteed to protect my rights too. So I support free speech for selfish reasons. So that's the inner libertarianism in me in that regard. And I would call myself a left libertarian. In fact, if you call me a left libertarian, I would not be angry about it. You could call me a social justice warrior for free speech, and I'm good about it. You can call me a woke skull against council culture. That's fine too. All that applies. It does. But kudos to Thomas Massey, who's been a voice against war, who's been a voice for civil liberties, who's been a voice for free speech. And I may disagree with him on the economics, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, I don't expect people to agree with me 100%, but my inner libertarian impulses do overlap with his. We just have disagreement on the economics. So, but what I'll do is I'll play you a little bit of Thomas Massey talking to Craig Pastor-Jardula, who was on Due Dissonance you just saw a little while ago. And let me do that real quick here. And because Pasta was at the convention, I agree and disagree with what Thomas Massey said. So let's go ahead and play that. Give me a second here. We'll get underway, and we'll get back to Chase Oliver in a moment.
Thanks.
Yes. Sorry. All right. So you said that.
Sorry.
Just say pasta to go. I'm an independent journalist and whatnot. You know. All right. Nice to meet you, Congressman. So you said that Donald Trump was one of the most anti-war president in your time. However, a lot of people in my group don't like his Latin American policy. A week before he was out the door, he labeled Cuba a state sponsor of terrorism. There's a lot of colleagues on your side of the aisle that are for keeping these sanctions and all this pressure on the Cuban government, despite them having a new leader. What is your position on what we should do when it comes to Latin America? And would you recognize that a lot of the reasons we have so much migration to the border is our foreign policy?
I'm not going to blame our foreign policy on illegal immigration. I mean, part of the biggest reason we have illegal immigration into this country is Joe Biden is inviting them. I mean, they're being promised free benefits, amnesty, all of these other things. So, no, I'm not going to blame.
You don't think 100 bases in Latin America is a reason why stealing their resources is sending so many people to the border?
No, that's not the reason. I mean, I do think we should get the CIA out of Central and South America. I do think we should end all of the sanctions on Cuba. Those are just sane things to do. But blaming our foreign policy or blaming immigration on our foreign policy is almost as in Central America, I think is almost as ridiculous as blaming global warming on the illegal immigration. Our policies in this country, Joe Biden's policies, are causing that illegal immigration right now.
So why was there so much immigration before Joe Biden? There was a lot of immigration when Donald Trump was the president, when Ronald Reagan was the president, and there are 100 bases in Latin America.
Well, we have welfare. I mean, you got welfare benefits. I don't blame people for wanting to come to this country. We've got better schools. We've got better jobs.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. That was my question. That was my question. Do you believe that Cuba should be labeled a state sponsor of terror, or would you think that we should pull that designation off them?
I would not label any country a state sponsor of terrorism, because right now we've got a global war on terrorism. It's basically the ability to go to war with any country that gets that label, or to put sanctions on those countries. The other foolish thing is once you start sanctioning countries, they quit using the dollar. And that's the last hat trick we have to deal with our debt, is to inflate the dollar and take the reserves out of those sovereign banks without even making a withdrawal. you know, by deflating the dollar. So sanctions don't make sense.
Yeah.
Defining them as state sponsors of terrorism, that only gives the executive branch more power, because there's a whole host of things then that a president can do without Congress once they get that designation. So no, I wouldn't make that designation.
There's a lot of people here who want you to be the Speaker of the House. Do you want the job? I mean, because I think as a leftist, a lot of people say that this guy's the most common sense. He's the most practical out there. Do you want to be the Speaker of the House if you have the opportunity to do so?
I don't want to be the Speaker of the House. If we can't find somebody else that'll do it, I would do it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, I do have a few things to say about Congressman Thomas Massey. A point when I saw that just now that I didn't pick up until I heard it just now, and that was what he talked. He didn't mention BRICS, but he was referencing BRICS about when we do sanctions, you know, it undermines the U.S. dollar. The reason why BRICS was formed partly was, you know, as a response against all these countries that suffer from sanctions, because, you know, the United States do tend to act like a bully around the world at times for just kind of winking the wrong way. So in that regard, you know, when the United States feel the negative effects of BRICS, they need to remember they brought that shit on themselves. They really did. Now, when it comes to Trump's foreign policy, it's a mixed bag. I do believe that there was less war under him than in previous administration, but it was kind of like by accident. But it was still not perfect. Appointing a new president in Venezuela when they voted for a president already, Nicolas Maduro, was not exactly Trump's finest deed. Of course, that had John Bolton's fingerprints on it. So there is that. Obama did good easing up on sanctions and trying to soften relations with Cuba, and he reinstated a lot of that crap back against Cuba, which was wrong. Moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and the Abraham Accords pretty much triggered the events of October 7th to the situation that you see now. The murder of Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, the Iranian general, with the drone strike, was stupid, considering that here's the thing about Iran. Iran and the United States don't like each other, but the dirty little secret is they have some common enemies, like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and some of these other folks. It was stupid. Sometimes the United States do stupid things. Remember, John Bolton was calling for support of Al-Qaeda to bring down Assad. I was talking about that the other day on my video with Tulsi Gabbard. Let's never forget what happened with Saudi Arabia, selling arms to Saudi Arabia. Again, you saw a coalition with the left and right, with libertarians and leftists. Mike Lee, who is a conservative-leaning libertarian type. Rand Paul, same thing, linking up with Bernie Sanders, socialist. Well, at least some of us thought at the time. Anyway, you get the point. To stop the sales of arms to Saudi Arabia, to stop a genocide in Yemen. Trump vetoed that shit. So, you know, now, had it been a Mitt Romney presidency or a John McCain presidency compared to a Donald Trump presidency, we'd have had a quadruple helping of Bush Cheney redux, obviously. So, but I think that basically the combination of resistance liberals with Trump derangement syndrome, never Trumpers, and the Trumpies fighting each other, I think that all that kind of accidentally made the U.S. in a less aggressive mode. I think that's what happened. So there was that. Now, with regard to Biden and Trump, when it comes to immigration, I get so tired of hearing that. I don't like the two-party system, but I hear the same old thing every time a Democrat's president. No, Democrats just let the border just flood in all these immigrants. It's just kind of like, don't they ever get old? We have a migration crisis no matter who's president. And the reason we have a migration crisis is not because of the welfare and all of that. We have a migration crisis because the U.S. meddled in the affairs in Latin America. Some people call it a Tuesday. It's just what the United States likes to do. And you make life so miserable that, you take a country like the United States, which is not really all that great of a country economically, but, maybe a little bit better than the global South. That may have a little more appeal, I guess. But here's the thing. If you want to control the border, do it in a way where you don't go and make life miserable for people elsewhere. Sort of the same thing with the Syrian refugees back in 2017 when that was big and controversial. You don't want the Syrian refugees in. Well, stop bombing the shit out of them. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's like, well, we're gonna bomb the shit out of you, but and call you terror, all of y'all terrorists. You come, I mean, this is crazy, just crazy. He's one of the loudest voices for Assange today in Congress. I'm talking about Thomas Massey. So kudos to anybody who supports Julian Assange, which is something I believe is dear to libertarians. I went to the Assange rally in Washington almost 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and I was there, and it was a beautiful sight. Leftists and libertarians getting together, marching, and I wish I could remember to play the video where you see me marching, but when you plan videos, you don't think of all the details. But suffice to say, I was there, marching with my fellow leftists, and marching with the libertarians, and it was a beautiful thing. And we put aside our differences because we were there for Julian Assange. Several months later, went to Rage Against the War Machine. Again, there was a lot of libertarians out there. There was a lot of leftists out there too. We put aside our differences. We even marched in front of the White House. It's a beautiful thing. Now, there were some unsavory characters out there at Rage Against the War Machines that I was like, I don't know about that, such persons. But, again, beggars can't be choosers in that regard. I got a lot of shit from some of my progressive friends for going to Rage Against the War Machine. Oh, the Mises Caucus is out there. As if, the fact that the Mises Caucus is out there is going to, turn me into a libertarian, like an anarcho-capitalist style, what's her name? What is her name? Ayn Rand style libertarian. That's what's going to happen to me. I'm like, folks, if you think I'm going to join the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party by going to Rage Against the War Machine, you're crazy. I saw their table. I wasn't even interested in visiting their table because, I don't, I'm not going to say I despise them. I mean, they're correct on a couple of things. leftists could probably find more in common with the Mises Caucus than, let's say, the so-called Freedom Caucus of the U.S. House of Representatives. Still, having that said, I'm glad if they had enough sincere anti-war sentiment in them, I'm glad they were there. So that's what it comes down to. I wasn't there to sit there with a list. Do you believe in expanding Social Security? Do you believe in Medicare for all? Do you believe that transgender women should enter sports? And if you don't believe in any of these things, fuck you. I'm not that guy. I don't do that. I have my positions. Again, as I said, you can agree and disagree with me all you want. I'm there to be against war. I'm there, I don't have a savior complex, but I'm saying this. I was there to try to do my part to save humanity from nuclear war. That's why I was there. You can call me a Russian. You can call me alt-right. You can call me a communist. You can call me all these things that they threw at people that went to Rage Against the War Machine. Don't care. I was there to save everybody from World War III. And that's what it came down to. And it was a beautiful thing seeing, libertarians and leftists, get together. The Libertarian Party and the People's Party. Hold on a second here. Give me a moment. This screen got bigger than it should have. So there we go. There are people, when I tell them I'm a leftist, a left libertarian, they will laugh. Oh, there's no such a thing. And I beg to differ. Noam Chomsky is a left libertarian, and he'll tell you that. And in many ways, so is Glenn Greenwald. They both kind of fit in that ideology. I just don't have the brilliant minds either one of them have. But I, ideologically have the same worldview that they both have. He's no longer alive. And I knew David when he was alive. And let's see here. Let me get that. David McReynolds was the Socialist Party candidate in 1980 for president. Socialist Party USA candidate for president in 1980. He was the first out of the closet gay man to run for president. And I will argue he was also a left libertarian in many ways. He had always, for example, he's always had kind words for Ron Paul and his son Rand Paul. Obviously didn't agree with him on the economics and maybe a few social issues. But he agreed with him where it counts. Military-industrial complex, defense contractors, an aggressive foreign policy to be curtailed. And David was a great anti-war activist from the War Resisters League. He was the famous guy that burned a draft card in 1965 in Madison Square Garden. And he ran in 1980 and he ran in the year 2000. I was lucky enough to vote for him in 2000. It was a write-in, but I voted for him in 2000. He died in 2018. He was 88 years old. Free speech absolutist, politically incorrect as hell, but still leftist down to his core. So my point is that, and I don't have the video. I forgot to put the video up, but on Revolutionary Blackout Network, Nick Cruz had Misty Winston, who was the organizer of the Assange event I just told you about, and she had Nico House on. He had Nico House on as well, and they were talking about collaborations and everything. And Misty Winston, all three of them to my left, by the way, but Misty Winston said that, she'll work with libertarians, like on things like, Assange and all that. She got no problem. We can disagree on economics and things of that nature, paraphrasing her. But the point I'm trying to make is that libertarians and leftists kind of do overlap. This is not an endorsement on the economics. Not an endorsement at all. I want to make that clear. And I will never endorse libertarian economics. But, but where some things, where we can work together, we can work together. If you're against capital punishment, you're not my enemy, If you're, if you want to go and end the drug war where it's terrorizing innocent people, and you want to go and shut down the profitability of organized crime by ending the drug war, in the black market, all that, make those streets safer again. Virtually all libertarians and many leftists, not all, but many, kind of see eye to eye on these issues. And I'm only saying this because, Chase Oliver is controversial as a libertarian candidate this time. I agree with Keaton Weiss, what he says earlier. He is a textbook libertarian, but, favoring mandates by a company is a backdoor way of favoring government mandates, because the government want the businesses to do it. Let's face it. They're happy when a company, because I got vaxxed and I got boosted. Now, they paid me $100 to do this, to get my vax. And I didn't do it for the $100. I didn't do it because it was the right thing to do. I was mixed on the vax. I was kind of like, don't have a problem with being vaxxed. I wanted to wait 1 year to see if it had an effect on people. So I was not like anti-vax, but I was vax skeptic initially. Not in a conspiratorial way or anything like that, but I'm thinking this shit was developed too fast. Let's see what happens to people. If somebody has complications, I don't want this put in me. And I think that's a reasonable skepticism. I'm not a conspiracy nut or anything like that. But when it comes to, my parents encouraged me. Some of my friends encouraged me. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, there is $100 I will get out of this. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and get vaxxed. I got vaxxed. And I got boosted. And it's been about maybe about a year and a half since I've been boosted. No, I'll take that back. It's been about 2 years since I've been boosted. I was going to get boosted, but I procrastinated. I didn't even get my flu shot this year. I work graveyard shift. I'm tired. I just haven't gotten around to it. So, but again, I'm all about you doing it. If you want to do it, if you don't, that's fine. Where I stand when it comes to vax and not vax is that's not the issue. To me, if you get COVID, you should get free treatment. That's where I stand. I just think to get treated for COVID or any other illness should be free. Because I die on that hill. And that's where I'm not libertarian. And that's where I'm the furthest thing from libertarian. But ironically, even on the question of universal health care, I'm kind of libertarian in a way, in spite of how much statism I want in healthcare. I have some libertarian impulses on that. I don't think that certain things ought to be like for example, theologically, I don't agree with Jehovah's Witnesses. But, you know, if an individual don't want a blood transfusion because they don't like blood transfusions, if they don't want a blood transfusion, this, you know, that individual shouldn't have to have one because of their religious freedom. And I believe in religious freedom. I believe freedom of religion and freedom from religion to me means the same thing. That's a different argument, though. You know, it's your what's the other one? Scientology. You know, they're kind of similar in that regard. I think they're a little more extreme when it comes to other aspects of health. If they don't want to have any medical things done to them, then the state should respect them as an individual in that regard. So that's where I'm a libertarian. But if you're sick and you're dying or you need medical attention, you shouldn't have to lose your home and your life savings and go homeless because of it. You should not have to be bankrupt and lose the shirt off your back. So I that's where I stand on that issue. So, and I don't think what I'm trying to advocate is unreasonable. I think the healthcare ought to be available for everybody. Is where I'm definitely not a libertarian, but I think that while it should be free for everybody, if you don't want it, like if you don't want the actual treatment, you know, for your own personal reasons, then that's up to you. Because if you're a true socialist, I'm not saying I speak on behalf of all socialists, but I am a socialist as far as I'm concerned. I think I do have an individual take on socialism. But the socialism I advocate does provide choices for you. And I do want as much avocation of personal liberty as one can find under such a system. In other words, I want people to have their cake and eat it too. I want security for all, but I want freedom for all at the same time. And I think you can have such a balance. And I know there are people out there, whether they're kind of shit-libby, busybody liberals, who don't believe in universal health care, but do have a totalitarian outreach that socialists get badly stereotyped for. And then you have people who are freedom-loving conservative, right-leaning people, or authoritarian conservative and right-leaning people who want all the capitalism, but you know, on the social sphere of life, control your life. So, you know, there's a lot of nuance out there when it comes to ideology. And and there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to this sort of thing. But, you know, as far as Chase Oliver, I don't, you know, if I was a libertarian, I don't know what I would do in this presidential election. I guess if I was a libertarian, I guess I would be what you would call a mutualist, which is probably the closest thing, maybe to something that's akin to socialism. But I'm guessing I'm not a libertarian ideologue. But you know, I guess if I was a libertarian, I guess I would be in that group, generically speaking, the good vibes and man, can we all just get along, being laid back, man, kind of, hippy dippy type. The kind of the kind of people stereotype a lot. The more benign kind, and all of that. I certainly wouldn't be anarcho-capitalist. Far from it. So anyway, I talked long enough. I hope I wasn't sounding like I was all over the place. All right. Miguel, how are you doing today? Warren, this better be good. I'm missing a Ron Popeil infomercial for this. I hope that this was a good one. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. All right. See, none of this matter. We're all on a backup copy of the Matrix running for a rogue server runner on Windows 95. How you doing, Ed Heller? Life treating you good? It's the countdown going to retire. That's funny. Let's see here. All right, I'm just scrolling. I want to make sure everybody's accounted for. Daniel Barry Sports Highlights, how are you doing? Desert Mantis, how are you doing? Great Patine, how are you doing? Employer, you should not play doctors unless your employer is a doctor, that is. Yep. I'm not a libertarian because I find them too rugged individual oriented at the expense of society at large. Yeah, the whole pull yourself by your bootstraps mentality is just a little much at times. I mean, it's kind of unhealthy. I've been trying to figure out how the Libertarian Party choose a woke guy who favors mandatory mask mandates and vaccination. Good question, Sean. I am too. Here's a scenario that won't please the blue team partisans. Yeah, I'm perplexed myself. What if these people who voted were former Democrats who migrated to the Libertarian Party? Well, the Libertarian Party tends to attract former Democrats and former Republicans for their reasons. I mean, I run across former socialists and former leftists who are in the Libertarian Party for their their liberal or progressive reasons. Are libertarians okay with private market genocide? I think it depends on who you're talking to. Chile under Pinochet was economic libertarianism with authoritarian socially authoritarian. Look what they did to leftists, throwing them off of helicopters. Thanks for the shout out. Anytime, Sean. Anytime. Do libertarians support any kind of collective good like public utilities? I think his name is Larry Sharp. I think he would be what you would call a left libertarian. He has a show online, and he's been a guest on Due Dissidence. He sounds lefty libertarian. He seems to favor like state employees credit union, like local public banks, things of that nature. When hearing him talk, I'm going to have him on my show. Municipal internet for you. I think that they're okay with things being done on a local level. Let's see how many libertarians understand that federal spending works, or how state and local spending works. I mean, it's kind of a utopian ideology in a lot of ways. It's kind of like Marxism. It works great on paper. Sometimes human nature kind of will kind of step in and spell out how things are. Frederick Hayek was okay with the government providing service he felt the free market couldn't. Well, that's kind of how I feel about healthcare. I think the free market just can't do it. Should the trust public utility services whims or private motive? Yeah, public utilities ought to be socially owned. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to try to work on my impersonations because a business is run and regulated by the government doesn't mean that it isn't a problem. Politicians are notoriously greedy, and that's a good point too. And there's never got to be a way to have it so where we can kind of eliminate the potential of corruption. Honestly, Alex Jones is asking him to do his Ben Shapiro. Oh my gosh! My Ben Shapiro impressions. I can't do it quite as well as Alex Jones. Shout out to Pasta to Go. Yep. And I met Pasta at the Rage Against the War Machine rally a couple of years ago. Last year. Last year. Let's see. A Libertarian Jesus. I think that might have been referred to as Ayn Rand. Let's see. I should point out that there are ANCAP libertarians who think government should not be involved in anything. Oh, don't I know it? I know quite a few anarcho-caps out there. I know definitely firsthand, for damn sure. Libertarians, the next mental disorder from capitalists. Again, I kind of think they're a mixed bag. How are you doing, PHX Cisco? I am guessing you're a fan of Deep Fat Pride too, because I seen you on the chat line like a few weeks ago. Yep, the anti-war movement ended in January 2009. They were also conspicuously quiet from January 93 to January 2001, and you are absolutely correct about that. You're absolutely correct about that. But they're kind of noisy under Genocide Joe. We're in the middle of Pied Piper 2. Dems think that orange jumpsuit and short fingers Donnie is going to make him easier to beat. The DMC is really dumb. Yeah, as I was telling Fiorella Isabel on Twitter today, I wish they would have had that kind of fortitude going after Reagan and Bush for Iran-Contra, or going after Bush and Cheney on lying about weapons of mass destruction. But you know, they won't do that though. To them, they'll go after Orange Man, who's actually policy-wise less right-wing, but you know, I guess more offensive in his rhetoric. There's a lot to criticize. I'm proud of Trump and RFK for asking the Libertarian Party for votes. You won't even see Biden asking for votes of AOC voters. And that's true. That's true. He's narcissistic opportunist, snake oil salesman. Oh, let me, friend of the Willie Bragg show, Lucy, Blue Moon Red Wine, that she's referred to, is going to be running as a write-in candidate in AOC's district, the 14th congressional district. She declined to. She's been a guest on the show, but she's declined to come on the show as a guest to talk about her campaign. She's not going to do that for any of the shows. So anyway, which I thought would have been interesting to talk about, but that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I want my $25 back from AOC. I want my several $1,000s back from Bernie Sanders over the years. And I want my $10 back from Tulsi Gabbard. So, all right. And I'm about ready to. I got to head on to work, folks. So I'm scrolling through. I don't want to miss anybody, and I'm looking through here. So I'm. Let's see. This is one of the reasons why I can't support Jimmy Dore at this point. He's gone so libertarian. He's telling everyone the climate change is bullshit. He sometimes has some takes that I can't go along with. But you know what? Here's the thing about Jimmy Dore and all of the really big people on the online left. And when I say the big people on the online left, Jimmy Dore, Sam Cedar, Young Turks, Kyle Kulinski, David Pakman, all of them, the really top tier big ones, Humanist Report, all of them, Status Quo, all of them have kind of gone in a direction that's a little different from when I started really liking all these people. When I used to listen to all these people nonstop. So, yeah. So anyway. There are people out there that think that I'm a Jimmy Dore simp. I agree with everything that comes out of his mouth. I mean, I'm literally. There are people have accused me that I'm like, I don't agree with him on everything. I don't agree with anybody on anything. And some people think that I'm still like a simp for Kyle Kulinski, and I don't watch Kyle Kulinski. Okay, well, Kyle Kulinski, I will maybe 2-3 videos a week. He's a little bit better than some of the others, but he's gone downhill since he turned into Dime Store Eminem. So I just can't really take him seriously anymore. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now because I have to go to work. I dread going to work, but it is what it is. If you all, Chase Oliver is running for president. It is what it is. He's a little weird, Yeah. So there you have it. If you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment any way you disagree with what I have to say. Share any content on this channel that you like. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we are the muckrakers of our time. And remember to reject corporate media because they have absolutely nothing to offer us. To subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show here on YouTube and Twitch and all the other platforms you'll see on the credits here, and I will edit my description box in the morning because I have no time to do that right now. So until next time, free Palestine, free Julian Assange, free healthcare for all, and free speech. Y'all take care. See you later. Bye-bye.